a reclusive teenager tasked to make new friends, resorts to an unconventional approach by unearthing bodies and assembling an undead household. In 1987, Oliver, a socially awkward teen, fixes breakfast for himself and his deceased mother. Meanwhile, social worker Margot and psychologist Julius are headed to Oliver, whose case was assigned to them. While on the road, the social worker recognizes that the secluded teenager requires support, given that his mother kept him locked away from the world ever since he was a child. However, Julius deems Oliver a hopeless case and advocates institutionalizing him. They then make a $10 bet regarding Oliver's case's outcome. Upon arriving, Margot and Julius catch the teen watching his late mother's favorite TV show. When Julius examines the teenager's goldfish, Bruce, he discovers that it has passed away, suggesting that Oliver hasn't been properly caring for it. Afterward, a hopeful Margot sits with Oliver, encouraging him to make friends within the next 7 days, because failure to do so could result in the court returning him to the psychiatric hospital. When the hesitant Oliver asks how to make friends, Margot advises him to just be natural and truthful. As they prepare to leave, the pessimistic Julius comments that Margot's advice will only ruin the teen's life. Meanwhile, on a plane, Frank's intoxication causes him to behave erratically, while mischievous Mel kicks Suzanne's seat, annoying the woman. Shortly after, Suzanne worries when she feels her seat being pushed forward, but it isn't Mel causing the disturbance this time. Following Margot's guidance, Oliver sets out on a mission to make friends. At the beach, he approaches Chloe, who appears to be new to town, and tries to befriend her. When she stands up, Oliver follows, and as they walk, he opens up about the tragic accident that took his mother's life. The teen recalls that his mother, Dolly, was relaxing in their small above-ground pool in the backyard. While attempting to take a photo of his mother, he tripped on the cord, causing the TV to fall into the pool. The shock launched his mother into the air, and she landed on a nearby gnome, which pierced her chest, leading to her untimely demise. Upon hearing Oliver's story, an uncomfortable Chloe abruptly leaves. Disheartened and rejected, Oliver then visits his mother's grave to share the most recent episode of her favorite TV show, as well as his unsuccessful attempt at friendship. Nearby, two gravediggers, Doug and Elliot, are discussing how Oliver hasn't found the right words to place on his mother's gravestone yet. Little do they know that above them, a plane flies with a trail of black smoke, and is about to crash. Determined to make friends, Oliver heads to the chicken run with a grocery bag of frozen pizza. Unfortunately, when he enters, Kurt approaches him at the door and pushes his groceries to the ground, causing the contents to spill out on the floor. Nearby, Kurt's friends, Don and Mark, laugh at the embarrassed Oliver. At home, Oliver watches the show Elf when the screen suddenly becomes distorted, interrupting his viewing experience. Afterward, he crosses out a day on his calendar, realizing that he now only has 6 days left to make a friend. The following morning, Oliver is about to make up an episode of the TV show to relay to his late mother, when the two gravediggers suddenly approach him, offering to take him on a free tour of the cemetery and share stories about the deceased. Despite the kind offer, Oliver declines, stating that he needs to focus on making a friend. Later, he notices a nearby memorial service for a teenager named Mitch, who tragically passed away due to a car accident. As he listens, Oliver hears Mitch's mother describing her son as a well-liked individual with numerous friends. That evening, Margot and Julius drop by to inquire about Oliver's progress. Oliver lies, telling them that he's made a friend named Mitch. However, when he confesses that he hasn't invited Mitch over to his house yet, Margot unconsciously says Oliver should dig him out and bring him over. Misinterpreting her words, Oliver takes her suggestion literally. Before leaving, Margot congratulates Oliver for making a new friend, while Julius remains skeptical, suspecting that Oliver may be delusional. Following Margot's advice, Oliver proceeds to the cemetery and begins to exhume Mitch's grave. After retrieving the lifeless body, he transports Mitch back to his home, where he positions him on the sofa, and begins to talk to the lifeless body as if he were still alive, sharing the details of his mom's accident. Before the night ends, he encircles a box in his calendar, marking it as the day he finally made a friend. The following day, a repairman arrives to fix Oliver's broken TV. To avoid raising suspicion about Mitch's true state, Oliver places sunglasses over his eyes. After the repairman successfully fixes the TV, he attempts to give Mitch a high five, prompting Oliver to raise Mitch's arm to meet the repairman's hand just in time. Later, as Oliver walks down the street, Chloe gets out of the taxi and hurries over to him, apologizing for abruptly leaving during their first encounter. To show her sincerity, she offers him a peace offering. After confiding to his mother's grave about successfully making a friend, Oliver seeks out Doug, who mentions the recently buried plane crash victims, Frank, Suzanne, and Mel. As Oliver walks home, he's intercepted by Kurt and his gang, who demand to use his spacious home for their upcoming party. The isolated teen politely refuses, pointing out that he doesn't need friends like them anymore. Later that evening, Margot and Julius pay a visit to Oliver to check on his new friend, but he claims that Mitch isn't feeling well. Once they depart, Oliver thanks Mitch, acknowledging that he saved his life, because he won't be sent to the asylum anymore. Then, Oliver discloses to the lifeless body that he never had a family to rely on. He explains that his father was always preoccupied with work and never returned home one day, causing his mother to become despondent and fixated on watching TV while consuming martinis. Oliver clarifies that after his mother's accident, the police took her away. Despite Margot believing that he was too old to be adopted, he was eventually placed in a psychiatric institution until his birthday last month. Although the court allowed him to return home, Oliver continued to feel unhappy and lonely in his spacious house until he met Mitch, who he considers his friend and a good listener. To deal with his desire for company, Oliver resorts to exhuming the bodies of the plane crash victims to create a makeshift family. As he departs from the cemetery with the lifeless bodies, he unintentionally runs over a dog named Ninja and decides to take it with him to keep as a pet. Upon returning home with the corpses, Oliver props them up on the sofa while an episode of Alf plays on TV. As he prepares tea for Suzanne, he recognizes the episode in which the characters take a family portrait. Inspired, Oliver decides to create a photo album featuring his new family. He carefully arranges the lifeless bodies for the camera and takes a photo, but is unsatisfied with the initial result and plans to retake it the following day. Unbeknownst to him, the photo develops overnight, revealing an image of the lifeless bodies looking alive and resembling a picture-perfect happy family. The next morning, Oliver shockingly discovers that Suzanne has turned into an undead being, ironing clothes in the living room. She then reprimands him for oversleeping and proceeds to assign him a list of errands, including helping his father with the car and calling him for lunch. While passing through the living room, a zombie Mel playfully teases Oliver, remarking on his appearance after falling asleep in his clothes. When he admits to not having showered, his younger sister suggests that Mitch should also bathe, since he has an unpleasant odor. Outside, Oliver spots Mitch lounging shirtless in the sun. As Oliver approaches, he notices Mitch wearing his sunglasses. But when Mitch removes them, he reveals that Ninja ate his eyelids, leaving his eyes permanently open. Nearby, an undead Frank is repairing the car and requests Oliver's assistance, as he lost 3 fingers in the transmission. After locating the missing digits, Oliver's father secures them back onto his hand using a stapler. As they return inside for lunch, Suzanne prepares hot dogs and fries for Frank. During the meal, the father confesses that he's unable to find his missing finger. Meanwhile, Kurt runs into Chloe at the restaurant and offers to hang out with her, but she rejects him. As Oliver passes by, Chloe unexpectedly invites him on a date, leaving both Kurt and his gang surprised. Upon arriving home, Oliver finds Suzanne and his father dancing in the living room. When the teen switches the channel, Suzanne reminds him to tidy his room, make his bed, and take a shower before dinner. In the bathroom, Mitch extends an invitation to Oliver to attend a party. However, Oliver politely declines, citing that he has a date with Chloe. While getting ready, Mitch takes the opportunity to offer Oliver some dating advice. However, their conversation is abruptly interrupted by Suzanne, who summons them for dinner. Upon learning of Oliver's date, Suzanne reminds him to wash the dishes before he leaves. As Oliver begins washing the dishes, Suzanne reminds him to return home before midnight. Their conversation is interrupted by Mitch's unexpected entrance into the kitchen, who reveals that Ninja bit off his arm. With Suzanne occupied with tending to the injured dog, Mitch offers his dating advice to Oliver. Mitch recommends that Oliver take Chloe to a scenic location, always bring a wingman, and to ultimately meet her parents. Later, Oliver and Chloe decide to remain in the car watching the view while she shares her family struggles. Despite Oliver's suggestion to go elsewhere, Chloe opts to stay and continue their conversation. As Chloe leans forward in her seat, Oliver suddenly notices Frank's missing finger and deftly reaches over to grab it. Chloe then shares that she's never had someone to sit and talk to before, until she met him. Suddenly, Chloe expresses her desire to go back home, so Oliver offers to drive her. However, Chloe declines the offer and instead suggests that she'll call a cab from his place. When they arrive outside his house, Mitch greets Chloe and insists that he and Oliver drive her home, and she finally agrees. Outside Chloe's house, Rachel, Chloe's mother, expresses her gratitude towards Oliver and even instructs Chloe to give him a goodnight kiss. Following her mother's request, Chloe complies, which leaves Oliver feeling happy and content with the way the evening turned out. Later that night, while watching Alf, Oliver thanks Mitch for his dating advice, but the teen zombie reveals that he just made it all up. The following day, Julius points out to his colleague his suspicion that Oliver may be hiding something in his house. As they arrive at Oliver's doorstep, the teen hurriedly hides Ninja inside the piano, while Mitch attempts to fix the bandage on his head. As Margot and Julius enter, Oliver introduces them to Mitch. To convince Margot about their friendship, Mitch explains that he was in a car accident and that Oliver saved his life. Later, as Oliver goes to get some drinks for his guests, Julius begins to explore the rooms, completely unaware that the rest of the zombies are walking in the hallway. As Julius enters Mel's room, he notices a detached ear lying on the floor and examines it. However, when he goes to the bathroom, he's shocked to find Suzanne in the bathtub, prompting him to rush out. Upon returning to the living room, Mitch clarifies that the woman in the bathtub is his mother, lying that his whole family is currently staying in Oliver's house for their vacation. As Oliver returns with refreshments, Julius convinces Margot to leave early by making up an excuse that they have an urgent meeting to attend. As they return to the car, Margot celebrates winning the bet, but Julius reveals that he found something suspicious in the house. However, Margot refuses to believe him, thinking that Julius is just making it up because he lost. On Halloween night, Oliver and Frank sit together on the front porch. During their conversation, Frank shares a personal story about his father giving him a cigar at 14, with instructions to save it until he becomes a man. However, Frank disregarded the advice and ended up finishing the whole cigar in a single day, which caused him to throw up for 2 days. After Frank departs, Kurt and Dawn, who are wearing Halloween costumes, approach Oliver, demanding a treat for Halloween. Kurt then issues a menacing ultimatum, warning Oliver that if he doesn't hand over $300, they'll retaliate with a harmful trick, such as vandalizing his home or physically assaulting him. Upon hearing Kurt's demands, Frank approaches and strangles him, causing his arm to get torn off. Frightened, the bullies flee the scene. Later on, as they share a drink together, Frank reassures Oliver that he's not alone and has someone to rely on. Meanwhile, Suzanne reaches out to Rachel and extends an invitation to a Halloween party at the Chicken Run. Mitch then generously offers to provide costumes for the occasion. Later, as Oliver places his order at the restaurant, a group of strangers approaches his family's table and compliments Frank for wearing 2 Halloween masks, unaware that the second one's just his face. Shortly after, Chloe's family arrives, dressed up in vampire costumes. After ordering, Oliver returns to the table, but Kurt and the bullies surround Chloe, pestering her with questions about Oliver's whereabouts. Oliver confronts him, but Kurt responds with a hard punch that sends Oliver's head crashing into a table. As a result, Oliver loses consciousness and blood begins to trickle from his mouth. Shortly after, Oliver grabs Kurt by the neck and leaves his hand on him, scaring the bully enough that he wets himself in front of everyone. Once Kurt realizes that the zombie's hand was just a prop, he becomes embarrassed and attempts to assault Oliver again. However, Chloe intervenes and tells Kurt to leave, and he eventually complies, ashamed and defeated. Following the incident, Oliver returns the zombie hand to Mitch. Customers at the restaurant then proceed to commend him for his bravery, hailing him as a hero. In a touching moment, Oliver and Chloe share a kiss. As they drive home, Oliver and his zombie family revel in the victory of the night, singing joyfully together in the car. Unbeknownst to them, Julius has entered their home and is conducting an investigation of his own. Upon discovering a severed finger in the house, Julius grows concerned that Oliver may be losing his grip on reality. Worried about his safety, he contacts Bradley and orders him to dispatch an ambulance to retrieve Oliver. As Julius attempts to gather more evidence, he begins to film inside the house, when a masked Oliver appears, catching Julius in the act. Oliver warns Julius to leave the premises immediately or risk involving the police. Undeterred, Julius continues to film and eventually comes face to face with the rest of the zombie family. As they turn on the lights, Suzanne checks Julius for a fever by touching his forehead, and accidentally leaves a piece of skin on his face, causing Julius to panic and flee. As Julius rushes out of the house, the ambulance arrives on the scene, but to his surprise, the paramedics place him in a straitjacket instead of Oliver. The next day, Oliver wakes up and accidentally knocks Mel over, causing her head to detach from her body. Suzanne then arrives and instructs Oliver to go into his mother's room to retrieve something they left for him. Inside his mother's room, Oliver is surprised to discover a yellow rose on the bed. Later, while passing by the beach, Margot approaches him with news that Julius has fallen ill and may require some time to recover. She intends to close his case and assures him that she'll be there to support him if he needs her. Later, Oliver heads to the graveyard to pay his respects to his mother, which finally has engraved details on it. As he places the yellow rose on her plot, he confides that he hasn't been able to watch TV anymore, as recent events have left him preoccupied. Through tears, he expresses how deeply he misses her. Later that evening, Suzanne receives word that Frank's DIY shelf building project has gone awry. Distracted from her ironing, she inadvertently starts a fire. Meanwhile, Oliver detects the smoke from the bathroom and frantically makes his way downstairs to investigate. However, he succumbs to the fumes before reaching the living room. Upon regaining consciousness, Oliver sees Frank and Mitch pulling him towards the door to save him from the fire. Unfortunately, a piece of wood falls and pins him down, rendering him immobile. Frank and Mitch quickly recover it and urge Oliver to escape. Despite his reluctance to leave his loved ones behind, Oliver expresses his desire to stay with them. However, Mitch and Suzanne reminds him that they're already dead while he still has life ahead of him. The zombie family embraces Oliver one by one, bidding him farewell and promising to await his arrival on the other side. They then return to their original positions on the sofa, similar to when Oliver took the photo. Despite the heart-wrenching decision, Oliver gathers his strength and exits the house, clutching the fishbowl Mel handed him. A firefighter quickly tends to him, and Oliver confirms that he was alone in the house. Soon after, Chloe arrives to comfort him after the traumatic experience. As the fire rages on, the family picture is consumed by the flames. Walking away from the scene with Chloe, Oliver discovers a cigar in his front pocket and takes a puff. When Chloe asks if they went home, Oliver nods, holding the fishbowl and revealing that Bruce is still alive.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.